Moving on, I now request Shipra Deo, State Team Uttar Pradesh Landesa, to give performance. Again, my great joy at UP being the focus.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad that even before I come here, the session chair has already set the context on how difficult a state Uttar Pradesh is. And I'm really sorry about my throat, which is not keeping well. So if you have a problem understanding any word, please feel free to pitch in between. I'll be talking about some of the women land rights issues in the state of Uttar Pradesh, both at the policy level and at the implementation level, and some of the initiatives that have been taken by Landesa and also others in Uttar Pradesh. I'll be talking briefly about women and land and touching upon the issues of inheritance and government transfer, and also look at the role of culture and norms in setting up the mindsets that keep women deprived of the land rights and what women have done to make their claims. We have been we have talked enough since morning through the keynote speaker and also earlier in some of the sentences by Dr. Huck in the morning to set the stage on how important are land rights for women in empowering them and in overall development of the family and the community. But I do think all these things are just an extension to why women land rights. Because women do have rights to own land, not because it's only empowering, but also primarily because they are independent individuals. And any other justification around it is just an extension to this. If we look at the statistics of Uttar Pradesh, then uh, the agriculture census says that only 7% of total operational holdings are held by women, as against 13% that are being held at the India level, and this was the data that was presented in Oxfam's presentation also. And we have talked enough about why land is important for women to establish themselves as farmers. We did a survey of around 1,500 women in Uttar Pradesh, and strangely, 82% of women themselves did not know about any women in their village or their community who owns land. So just the idea of women owning land is a little bit strange in the communities in UP. Women land rights are actually determined by a complex web of interrelations between the culture and norms that surround the formal as well as the informal institutions. Women actually, broadly, if we see women get land through three channels. One is by inheritance, the other one is by government transfers, and the third one is by market purchase. So I'll touch upon these three briefly. If we look at inheritance in UP, so there is a common belief that after Hindu Succession Amendment Act, women everywhere have equal land rights. But actually it's not that simple because the revenue laws in the states are governed by the state laws. So revenue land is governed by that. If we look at the revenue code of the state, in the recent amendment in 2016, the state has done some changes to the line of heir. And in doing these changes, an unmarried daughter was earlier at the third priority of succession, but through this recent change, they have brought an unmarried daughter to the first line of inheritance, through which they become parallel to sons. Now, it certainly is a welcome change to an extent, and it shows that to an extent the state was showing sensitivity towards rights of women to own land. But when we look at it from another perspective, we see that if a woman loses those land rights by getting married, then by all chances, she will be, her brothers would try to get her married off as soon as possible in whatever way, so that they can have their rights of land. And if we look at the 15th line of priorities of inheritance, we see that son's daughter is given a higher order of priority than the daughter's son. And daughter's daughter, she's like nowhere in the 15 orders. And in cases where a man has several wives, then all widows are equal to just one share. If there are 3 sons and 2 wives, the 2 wives will get the share equal to 1 son. And then a widow who has remarried is also kept out of the succession order. And there is actually a huge gap between ownership and control. I look at a case study. This is a girl called Anju. She is 16 years old and is the eldest of 6 daughters, eldest of 6 sisters. Her father passed away some 2 years back, and her father had a share of 50% land and 30 bighas of the family land. But Anju or her mother could not get any land, though the provision says that a widow is the natural heir of a man's land. Now the reason is that after her father passed away, the family called for a village panchayat meeting, and all the elders from the community and the family decided that since this family only has daughters, the mother of this girl should adopt the son of his brother, her brother-in-law, and then will off her share to the son. So now, what's playing a role? Is it the law or is it the mindset? Rita already talked about the importance of mindsets to be changed, but this is how a mindset gets reflection and how it impacts land rights of women. If we look at land ownership of women through land transfers, and if we look at the case of Uttar Pradesh, in Uttar Pradesh, land is given to landless people through government transfers by land management committee. Not many states have land management committee. So far, I only know of UP and Bihar that functions through this channel. And members of all these land management committees are the elected representatives who come after the panchayat election. Village Pradhan is the session chair. And by default, 33% of the members of LMC committee are women. And most of these LMC members, men included, they don't just even know that they are member of something called Land Management Committee, leave alone the steps that they take for land allocation. We started looking at the reason in the state, and we found out that the Panchayati Raj department that's responsible for providing training to the newly elected pradhans, in the module through which they provide the training, they just don't talk about land management committee. So when those people become pradhans or they become members of land management committee, they just don't know that there is something called this, and they have some of the responsibilities by virtue of being member of land management committee. Joint patta allocation is a provision in the revenue code, both for homestead land as well as for agricultural land. But if we look at the language of articulation of joint pattas in the revenue code, it doesn't say that man and woman or the couple will be the joint holder of the land. It actually says that if land is being given to a man and if he is married, the woman in the family will be the co-allottee of that patta. So it doesn't actually recognizes her as a right holder in a complete sense, but that's the language that it uses. And that certainly is because of the biasness that's there in the entire bureaucracy and everyone around. And violation of this joint patta is the norm in UP because people down the line in the revenue department, they don't even, number one, know about the provision. And when they know about the provision, they are just not willing to take steps towards it. In my interaction with the Lekpal, who was actually giving possession to some of the plots, I asked him that when there is a provision of joint land allocation, why aren't you giving it joint? And his answer was, it's such a small patch of land. What's the purpose of giving it to two people? So that's the kind of response, that's the kind of mindset that people have. And very close to this this government allocation is the cases of regularization. So although in the revenue code joint titles are the provision, but on the cases of regularization, the revenue code is silent whether they should be joint. So by default, everyone reads it as the land to be given to the head of the households and not jointly. She is a woman from Jaunpur. She is 30 years old and mother of two. Her husband was abusive. She filed a divorce case and came to a parental home. For a while, she could live in the family with her brothers and her father, but after her father's father also passed away, she was just thrown out of the family and she lives in a thatched roof uh, in a small area on the outskirts of the village. When my team in Uttar Pradesh was trying to facilitate conduction of land management committee for land allocation and to landless people, the land management committee didn't agree to include this woman in the list. One is land allocation to individual women is recognized by the revenue code only to the widow women, and other kind of single women who may be never married or who have divorced or who are living separately are not recognized by the revenue code. But what is strange is the justification or the reasoning given by the land management committee. The reasoning that they gave was that if they give land to this woman who is the daughter of the village, it will be a badge learning for all the other daughters of the village, and they will not try to adjust in their families, in the marital families, and would try to come back in their natal families and get land. So this is how mindset reflects, and this is how mindset impacts policy making, and mindset impacts their implementation too. The rigid norms that surround the idea of good women and a bad women, and all the customs and practices, and an endless list of norms through which we all get socialized, help women just learn to forego their land rights in favor of their brothers. And in my understanding, I have found out that it's this mindset which plays a huge role in creation of policies and laws which by themselves are inefficient, and then their implementation to a great extent. And I think it's very, very important for us to recognize these playing a role and also consciously take steps towards addressing these. Recently, in a word development report that came out in 2015, it talks about mind, society, and behavior, and it also stresses the need for governments to act on changing social norms. And a lot of other organizations have recently also started recognizing the role of social norms women underprivileged. And having said all these, I believe that resistance by women is as old as the suppression itself. Individually or collectively, here and there, they had always been raising voices. We just looked at deeply about the cases of RO campaign and how impactful it was at how women could raise their voices. And that's happening everywhere where people are taking efforts for women to take their voice. So I do think that it's really important to invest in raising consciousness of women, making them more assertive, and also to engage with stakeholders from top to bottom so that they are more aware of the gender aware approaches and are more open to adopting them in whatever they do. Women really, when they get sensitized, when they get spaces where they can speak, they really talk about the importance of land ownership and they say that they want land. This is the picture of a patta allocation camp that we organized in UP, and this is something that we are initiating in UP just to bring in transparency to the entire system of land allocation. And it was a camp in which around 115 pattas were distributed in one village. With this, I'll end here.
Thank you, Shipra.